Inside the Magic, show number 315 for April 17th, 2011. It is Sunday, April 17th, 2011. This is show 315 of Inside the Magic, and as always, I'm your host, Ricky Briganti. And as always, we've got another great show packed with Disney and theme park news and a whole lot more fun. And before we get started, I do invite you to visit InsideTheMagic.net. There you'll find all of our videos, podcasts, news, articles, and a whole lot more. And if you have any news, tips, or questions, you can contact me by writing to Ricky at InsideTheMagic.net or call and leave a message at 407-494-4ITM. That's 4486. And now, let's get on with the show. This week's episode of Inside the Magic is brought to you by Magical Travel. The Disney Cruise Line is hot, 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 so don't wait to book your vacation on the new Disney Dream because space is very limited, and you can receive free shipboard credits when you book with Magical Travel. Summer is fast approaching, so plan your summer vacation today. Call Magical Travel at 866-207-8387 or visit them online at magicaltravel.com to receive a free price quote, and be sure to mention Inside the Magic to receive your free Disney gift card for qualifying bookings when you book your Disney vacation with Magical Travel. And by listeners like you, thanks very much for all of your contributions to Inside the Magic. If you want to help support the show, head on over to InsideTheMagic.net and look for any of our affiliate links, or there's PayPal donation options as well. And now, we'll start off the show with our trip around the world. So last week on the show, I actually recorded the show a bit early. It wasn't on Sunday, but it was a few days early because I spent the weekend on a bit of a getaway in the Atlantis Resort in the Bahamas, which was a whole lot of fun. When we arrived, the Disney Dream ship was actually just sailing away a couple hours after we got there, which was great. Disney Dream shows up to Nassau in the Bahamas as part of its venture out into the seas, and there are available excursions at Atlantis. So because it is sort of Disney related there, I probably will talk about Atlantis on a future episode, not this week. Definitely going to post about it on InsideTheMagic.net soon, with plenty of video and photos, so you can look forward to that. Also this week, we are celebrating 6 years of Inside the Magic, believe it or not. Just a few days ago was our 6th anniversary, which I had actually almost completely forgot about. We're not going to do anything special, no big celebration this year, but it's just great to know that we've been around. This podcast has been around for more than 6 years now, which is just pretty crazy to think about. So thanks to everybody who has been listening since the beginning, or anybody who is just tuning in now for the first time, anyone in between. We really appreciate it. Also, this week, right now, we have, 56 people watching live as I record this on YouTube. It is live video for the very first time, so I guess we could say that's in honor of the 6th anniversary of Inside the Magic. Actually, on YouTube, on our channel at youtube.com/InsideTheMagic, we have reached recently more than 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is really fantastic, and I want to say thank you to everybody who is tuning in right now to watch this first ever live recording of Inside the Magic, and so let's get on with it. Actually, one more mention before we get to this week's Disney news. Of course, a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I started a new section of InsideTheMagic.net called Theme Parks in 3D, where I've been taking the old 3DS around to the parks and taking pictures. Well, I've recently posted some from Epcot and from more from the Magic Kingdom. We'll be posting some from Hollywood Studios soon. You can find it all over at themeparksin3d.com. All right, now let's get to the Disney news, where I think one of the biggest stories, or definitely one of the biggest stories this week, was the Beast's Castle rising up in Fantasyland out here in Florida. It's pretty incredible to see. It's part of the new Fantasyland expansion that's going on. Of course, that won't open until late 2012, but this new Beast Castle, of course, from Beauty and the Beast, is really showing up high above Fantasyland. Not as big as Cinderella Castle, of course, but Disney has been offering a few behind-the-scenes sneak peeks at what it looks like inside Beast Castle, or right nearby will be the Be Our Guest restaurant, which will have a ballroom dining experience. 550 seats is what Disney is saying will be in the restaurant. There will be quick service by day and a full table service by night, and there will also be a mysterious west wing of the castle as well. Of course, that's just one small part of all of what's going on in New Fantasyland. And so it's the beginning of actual construction going on in Fantasyland. You can actually see what it is rather than just some metal and dirt and all of that. So very, very exciting. And sticking with the Magic Kingdom, coming up is Easter on Sunday. And the Easter Bunny is going to be appearing at the Magic Kingdom on for a few days this week. And so anybody who's going to be celebrating with the very busy crowds around Walt Disney World, you'll have a chance to see the Easter Bunny. Next up, I want to talk Star Tours, which had a lot of really exciting news this week. First up, a new Facebook page was launched officially by Disney. It's facebook.com/Star Tours. Makes sense. And on that Facebook page, they announced 4 special mall appearances around Florida that will have basically showing off a bit of Star Tours. So the first one actually took place just yesterday. It was in Aventura Mall in Miami. And there were appearances by R2-D2, C-3PO, Jedi Mickey, and Leia Minnie. The following 3 mall appearances of promoting Star Tours 3D will be on April 30th at the Orange Park Mall in Jacksonville, May 7th at the Westfield Citrus Park Mall in Tampa, and May 14th right here in Orlando in the Florida Mall. Of course, May 14th is just 6 days shy of when Star Tours will actually be opening at Disney's Hollywood Studios, so not a whole lot of time there between the preview and the actual opening itself. Also on the Facebook page for Star Tours is a photo album featuring some additional artwork for the destinations that we'll be flying to when Star Tours 2 opens up. Star Tours The Adventures Continue. It shows a bit of the underwater Gungan city on Naboo, the landscapes of Kashyyyk, and the Hoth battle on the icy planet with AT-ATs, which is a little odd because the Star Tours is supposed to take place between both trilogies, so for some reason the AT-ATs are already on Hoth. But sure, why not? I would be more than happy to fly around in a Starspeeder 1000 and take down a couple of those AT-ATs. Of course, at this preview at the on the website, on Facebook, and even at the mall preview, Disney's been billing it as Star Tours 3D, really emphasizing the 3D aspect of the attraction. We do have a report from the Aventura Mall preview over at InsideTheMagic.net. You can see plenty of photos of the whole setup that they had there. They were actually giving away Star Tours Mickey ear hats that are exclusive to this. They were for anyone who took some pictures with the characters. Anyone who took the pictures, those were free, and you could go to StarToursPhoto.com to redeem those, only for those who were in attendance. In addition, one of the backdrops that was at the Star Tours preview in the mall was a first look at what appears to be the new Star Tours hangar. It's basically where the vehicle will leave for the Star Tours excursion, and inside on that picture actually was a look at Starspeeder 1000s, as well as what appears to be the Millennium Falcon, which is fun to see. Over on the left side of the backdrop, you could also see what it seems to be the back of a Carillion Corvette. And so just a little bit of a preview, pretty much the only new thing that came out of this this Star Tours mall site. Also, Disney has launched a mobile website at m.startoursmobile.com, and there the mobile website was offering a little more information about Star Tours The Adventures Continue. Nothing new, but they are offering for download some mobile backgrounds, wallpapers for your phone that feature C-3PO, Yoda, Darth Vader, and the Starspeeder 1000. So a lot of excitement around Star Tours this week. Of course, it opens up on May 20th out here at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, going in line with the world of Star Wars, there are rumors that there may be Star Wars Land coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios. These are very much rumors, so don't jump on this and think it's truth, but it's been a rumors going on for quite a while, but they seem to be picking up steam as Star Tours The Adventures Continue gets closer, about perhaps Star Wars taking over a large chunk of Hollywood Studios, taking over perhaps the Indiana Jones stunt show, perhaps the Sounds Dangerous area, even expanding into a backstage area with some new rides. Well, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. It's definitely rumor at this point, but wouldn't that be exciting? People are certainly saying that would be Disney's answer to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter by creating this really elaborate land based on all of the universes of Star Wars. So we'll just have to follow that and see if it turns into something more than a rumor. And sticking with the topic of Star Tours and Star Wars, out in California at Disneyland, the Star Trader store is going to be reopening very soon on May the 4th, which is an appropriate date for the world of Star Wars. Of course, May the 4th be with you and all of that. The X-Wing that was hung high overhead is returning to the store. There will also be the build-your-own lightsaber that we've had out here at Walt Disney World for quite a while, and also plenty of Star Tours and Star Wars-inspired apparel, toys, and more, and even some exclusive merchandise for pass holders. Apparently there's going to be quite a lot of Star Tours and Star Wars merchandise coming out when Star Tours reopens, which the official date for that in California is June 3rd. Let's come back out here to Florida now, still over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. We're starting on May 16th over at the Magic of Disney Animation. Winnie the Pooh will be replacing Lotso Huggenbear in a meet and greet. Also showing up in the park on that day will be the play and greet experience for Phineas and Ferb. And over in Luigi's Garage, Lightning McQueen's meet and greet will be changing a little bit. And Lightning McQueen will be having his debut at Lights Motors Action Extreme Stunt Show. He's going to have a cameo in that show driving around, and he's going to replace Herbie the Love Bug in the show. Sticking with the topic of Pixar, but moving on over to Epcot, it seems that the weekend of May 13th through 15th is going to be Pixar weekend at Epcot. Should be pretty exciting. They're going to really roll out every major Pixar character that you can think of into the park. And that includes WALL-E, the very rarely seen animatronic WALL-E that showed up at the D23 Expo. In addition, there'll be Green Army Men, Carl, Russell, and Doug from Up, Buzz, Woody, Jesse, Bullseye, Lotso, and Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story 3. We've got Boo, Mike and Sully from Monsters, Inc. We've got The Incredibles. We've got, of course, Lightning McQueen and Tow Mater from Cars 2, along with the Rust-eze girls, and several characters from A Bug's Life and Ratatouille, and even the Cars 2 logo projected onto Spaceship Earth. So it's going to be a fairly exciting weekend at Epcot. Of course, that is, the same weekend is when Destination D, Walt Disney World, is going on. So a very, very busy weekend at Walt Disney World. And this week, premiered over at the Magic Kingdom, was a new character from the Pirates of the Caribbean world. Her name is Angelica. She is Blackbeard's daughter. She's going to be seen in the upcoming Pirates of the Caribbean 4 on Stranger Tides. She's showing up in Adventureland at the Magic Kingdom, and also apparently at Disneyland over near Tom Sawyer Island's rafts. I've heard she even shows up with Captain Jack Sparrow. And then you can head on over to InsideTheMagic.net to see a little bit of video of what Angelica is like at the Magic Kingdom. And speaking of appearances, just a few nights ago here in Orlando was Lady Gaga's concert, which my wife went to. I did not, but she had a really good time. Well, the following day over at the Magic Kingdom, Lady Gaga posed for Disney's photographers with for a really fun photo with the evil queen, which I suppose is appropriate in some way for Lady Gaga. A very popular photo, of course. Lady Gaga, the musician, is very popular herself, so needless to say, her photo has been very popular. If you want to see it, head on over to InsideTheMagic.net. And there is an ongoing trial at certain resorts around Walt Disney World for free Wi-Fi internet in specific locations. You can currently find that here and there at the Contemporary, at Coronado Springs, and the Grand Floridian. We'll just have to wait and see how that moves forward in the future. If free Wi-Fi is going to become part of it all, or if it's just going to be a trial and no more. And Walt Disney World has announced their very first tweet up at the Walt Disney World Resort, of course. It's going to be coupled with Disney's fairy tale weddings and honeymoons in honor of the upcoming royal wedding. It's going to take place from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. on April 29th. You'll be able to show up with other fans of the royal wedding, I suppose, and watch the wedding live at Disney's Wedding Pavilion. Cinderella's coach will be there as well. Turning away from Disney here, but sticking with Orlando, coming up this Friday on April 22nd at SeaWorld will be the premiere of their new Shamu show called One Ocean. You can definitely check in at InsideTheMagic.net following the premiere of that show, as we will show you some highlights and plenty of pictures from the new show. And down in Tampa at Busch Gardens, testing has begun on the Cheetah Hunt roller coaster this weekend. They've started testing all of the various launches that are in that coaster. They are putting water dummies into the coaster cars. They're not at full speed quite yet, but they said they're going to run more than 3,000 tests around the coaster track and with the cars before anybody even attempts to sit in one of those cars and ride around the track. So very exciting. If you're going to be at Busch Gardens anytime soon, you probably will see the Cheetah Hunt coaster cars running around. That attraction opens on May 27th at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Here's some more non-Disney news related to Central Florida that I had not mentioned on the show, much to Inside the Magic listener Jeff's dismay. Jeff wrote in and said, while I am a huge fan of Inside the Magic and been listening since the first 5 shows, I'm not sure I've ever heard you mention what I consider to be the most important part of Central Florida, the Kennedy Space Center. The Visitor Center is a wonderful experience, and I think all Orlando visitors should go. My kids and I go frequently, and we attend many of the unique special events they hold, and of course all of the shuttle launches. My family... Many families I know rank their day at Kennedy as a highlight of their Orlando vacation. It is truly a theme park-like environment and not a museum. Well, this past Tuesday, the NASA administrator announced the facilities which will receive the 3 orbiters as well as a prototype Enterprise when they retire this year. While it was not necessarily a sure deal, the Kennedy Space Center will be receiving Space Shuttle Atlantis and building a $100 million facility/attraction for it. There is a concept art and video online. It looks incredible and seems like a must-visit. The public has never been allowed to see a real space shuttle before, and the best one could hope for was a mostly obscured view of one sitting on a launch pad a mile and a half away. After that, the best you could do was a full-size replica outside the Visitors Center. While I'm very excited about the new Fantasyland and the improvements at California Adventure, I'm even more excited to see this. Well, Jeff, thanks very much for sending that in. You're right. I should definitely have mentioned the shuttle experience. There's certainly a good number of things to do over at Kennedy Space Center, especially if you're into all of that. Mission space can only take you so far, whereas Kennedy Space Center is indeed the real thing. And it's certainly great that we are getting that attraction, as it will be, where you can see the real space shuttle on display. Now let's turn out to California, and actually still related here to Florida, where Disney this week released another sneak peek of the upcoming Little Mermaid attraction, the Little Mermaid Ariel's Undersea Adventures. And in the sneak peek video that they posted online, they gave a first look at King Triton as the animatronic figure of King Triton. Also, first look at the Kiss the Girl scene, as well as some artwork of Ariel's transformation scene that will take place in the Little Mermaid attraction. The video also takes a look at the orchestration behind the attraction, which is, of course, going to base the music on Alan Menken's famous music from the Little Mermaid film, but retooled to fit with the ride itself. So head on over to InsideTheMagic.net to see the King Triton animatronic in action, as well as everything else that I just mentioned. Also in California, the Soundsational Parade will be debuting on May 27th at Disneyland Park. And this week, Disney released a bit more information from it, including the floats that will be included in the Soundsational Parade. It'll be a Mickey Mouse drum float, a Little Mermaid float, a Disney heroine princess characters float. Princess and the Frog will have its own float, and then there will be various units themed to Aladdin, Three Caballeros, Peter Pan, Mary Poppins, Lion King, and the Jungle Book. There will be a drum line featuring 90, a drum line, and the parade will feature 90 performers. Sounds like it's going to be a really exciting parade. And it was announced this week that Disney legend Jack Lindquist, who was the first president of Disneyland Park, will be holding a book signing at the Disney Gallery at Disneyland Park on Sunday, May 1st from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. He's going to be signing his memoir called In Service to the Mouse. Over at the Disneyland Hotel, the ongoing improvements to the pool area are certainly taking shape. Many guests walking by can now see a glimpse at the monorail water slides that have been erected. There's a red one and a blue one, and you both slide right through the monorails. Looks very exciting. Still a few months away from being done, though. Let's move overseas now to Tokyo Disneyland, where, of course, it has been closed since the terrible disaster, the earthquake and tsunami a few weeks ago. Well, the good news is that Tokyo Disneyland did reopen on April 15th. Apparently, there were around 10,000 people waiting to get into the park in the morning, so many that Disney had decided to open the park a little bit earlier than expected in the morning. Disney also premiered a new castle walkthrough that day and really wanted to make all the guests just have a great time and kind of raise their spirits away from all of the negative aspects related to that disaster in Japan. The park has been closing a bit earlier than normal on a daily basis for low power consumption, trying to stick with really not taking up too much of the power that's available around the area. Tokyo Disney Sea has not yet reopened either, and there is no date for that quite yet. And then last week we had mentioned that ground has broken on Shanghai Disneyland, the new park that's coming several years from now to Shanghai in China. Well, I didn't mention last week, one of the details is that the castle there is going to be very unique, very different from all of the other Disney castles around the world. It's going to be called Storybook Castle, not necessarily representative of a specific princess, but rather just princesses in general and stories in general. It's going to feature a restaurant and other entertainment, and perhaps even have multiple entrances from multiple sides, and possibly act as almost the hub of the park, which is a really unique way to have a castle in a Disney park. Shanghai Disneyland seems like it's going to be a very different sort of Magic Kingdom Disneyland style park. You can head on over to InsideTheMagic.net to see the limited artwork that Disney has released so far. Not a whole lot of details as to what's going into Shanghai Disneyland yet, but it should be pretty exciting. Last week we mentioned some changes coming to the Disney Cruise Line, and apparently I overlooked one. Inside the Magic listener David wrote in and said that I did not mention the 15-night cruise from Los Angeles to Hawaii. And David's absolutely right. I did not mention that. It is a special 15-night voyage departing on April 29th from Los Angeles. It's going to be going to a number of stops around Hawaii, so yet another special trip aboard the Disney Cruise Line. It's going to start at $1,000 per person for a standard inside stateroom based on double occupancy. And I do have some sad news to report. Recently, Disney Imagineer Colin Campbell passed away. It was on Saturday, April 2nd. He was responsible for artwork related to the Jungle Cruise, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Haunted Mansion, and many other attractions. He did the artwork for the famous Haunted Mansion LP album that featured Ron Howard, a young Ron Howard's voice. And just sort of ironically, I suppose, out here in Florida, a new tombstone was included in honor of Colin Campbell prior to his passing in the new interactive queue area of the Haunted Mansion. So I suppose that became appropriate very quickly. Definitely a great tribute to a great Imagineer. Back back over to Facebook, actually, on Disney's official Grad Night Facebook page. Of course, Disney recently announced that Grad Night here in Florida at Walt Disney World would not be continuing past this year. This will be the last year for Grad Night. However, Disney's really trying to get seniors from high schools to come out to the parks throughout the whole year rather than just at the end of the school year. Apparently, it's all going to be called Disney Senior Class Trips, as it's been posted on the Grad Night Facebook page. They actually posted 2 different logos for people to vote on to see which one they liked best. And as part of this Disney Senior Class Trips, they're going to offer year-round discounted tickets for high school seniors and class groups, rather than, as I said, that end-of-the-year Grad Night. And let's turn to the world of movies now, where Jeff Bridges, a star of Tron and Tron Legacy, is going to be auctioning off a painting that he has done inspired by Tron to benefit Share Our Strength's No Kid Hungry campaign. There will also be a limited number of signed prints in addition to the original. It's going to be exclusively an online auction beginning just a couple days from now on April 20th. You can find it at disneyfineart.com/share-our-strength. The auction will run through April 29th. And continuing with Tron, the company EFX, collectible company, has announced they're going to be creating a replica of the original Tron helmet worn by the character Tron in the first film. So if you are a Tron fan, then you're going to want to keep an eye out for that. No price or date or anything for that quite yet, but everybody will be able to own a Tron helmet at some point in the future. And sticking with the world of movies, of course, the Lone Ranger movie is in the works for Disney, where Johnny Depp will be playing the character of Tonto, but the title role, the Lone Ranger, has not yet been named. However, there's a rumor going around that actor Ryan Gosling will be playing that title role. It is not confirmed yet, however. Gore Verbinski will be directing the film. And Disney Nature's latest film, African Cats, opens on Earth Day this coming Friday, April 22nd, in theaters. Here's kind of a fun news story. A ranking was released recently by Forbes, citing the richest fictional characters, and topping the list is my favorite, Scrooge McDuck, who's apparently, according to Forbes, estimated worth is $44.1 billion. I'm not even remotely going to think about how they could possibly translate Duckburg coins into American dollars, but they did, and that's how much they say Scrooge McDuck is worth. He topped the list, of course, of Forbes' richest fictional characters, but they said that he still trails Microsoft founder Bill Gates because Bill Gates is worth $53 billion. And final news story this week for Pirates of the Caribbean fans. If you want to dress piratey but also stay in fashion, Hayden Harnett has launched a bit of fashion inspired by the Pirates films and the attraction and all of that. It's with handbags and cuffs and scarves, and it's got a pirate flair to it without being overly piratey. It's not like you're going to wear an eye patch or anything, but it is going to cost you. The stuff runs from $98 up to $498. And that is it for your news from around the world this week. Here's a great tip that was sent in from Lindsay, who writes, I recently found out that I'd been given tickets to Cirque du Soleil at Downtown Disney as a college graduation present and wanted to make a reservation for dinner prior to the show at the T-Rex Cafe. Upon trying to make a reservation through the Disney website, I found there were no available times for the night that I wanted. Well, I decided to call the Disney dining number to see what they could do and was told to try calling the restaurant directly and was given their phone number. I did so immediately, and sure enough, when I called the T-Rex restaurant, the employee told me that you should just always call them, as they usually have more times available than Disney does. So that's my tip. Call T-Rex directly. Their number is 407-828-8739. They were extremely friendly and helpful and displayed that same customer service that we love from Disney. Great tip, Lindsay. I had no idea you could call T-Rex directly, but good to know. Next time I want to dine there, maybe I'll call them up and make a reservation that way. Everyone else out there, email your tips into tips@insidethemagic.net. And before we head on over to Skipper Ben this week, I want to put in a quick word about Lanyard Lab. If you need to promote a business, or perhaps you've got a organization where you need to wear name tags or ID cards around your neck, maybe at a school, a convention, a church, or any organization, please check us out over at lanyardlab.com. There we will customize a lanyard however you need it to be. You can use our online quote request form to submit all of your details to us, and we'll email you back with a price quote along with a proof showing you just what your lanyards will look like. It is all free to preview, no obligation, and then when you're ready to buy, you can do so right there easily on the website. So check it out over at lanyardlab.com. And now for everybody watching the YouTube stream, here's one of the in-between moments here on Inside the Magic you would not hear while listening to the podcast. I've paused the audio recording of the show while I take a drink of water and prepare Skipper Ben's segment. Just bear with me for a second, and we'll continue rolling. Okay, here we go. And now it is time to head on over to Skipper Ben for this week's Cruising the World.
Hello everyone, Skipper Ben here, and it's time for another edition of...
Technical difficulties. Please hold. It happens sometimes. And now it is time to head on over to Skipper Ben for this week's Cruising the World.
Hello everyone, Skipper Ben here, and it's time for another edition of Cruising the World. Boy, feels like it's been forever since I've talked to you guys. I've actually had a lot going on with my work. We relaunched the website that I work for, and wow, relaunching a website with a whole new redesign, that's a lot of work. A lot more work than I was even prepared to do. But we are finished. I'm back on a normal schedule again, and if you want to see that work and you're a sports fan, feel free to stop over to foxsportssouthwest.com and check out all we've done over there. But enough about me, let's talk about you. And I don't know where that came from. I'm just channeling my inner dinosaur pre-show. But let's get back in the swing of things a little bit. Like I said, I've been gone for a little while. A lot of stuff has gone on, namely the announcement with all the cool things that's going to be going on with Star Tours 2 coming up, and that actually, in a weird way, is going to twist all around here to get to a cast member story that I want to tell you about. See, one, I'm a huge Star Tours fan, and I'm just cannot wait for the new attraction to open. The only thing that hurts is I'm not going to be able to ride it until, gosh, next year, which is that's brutal. Absolutely brutal. But from everything I've read on it, everything I've seen, all the different variations of the ride, it's going to be well worth the wait. And where this gets to the cast member story was Ricky a couple weeks ago emailed me asking about if myself or Lisa had ever trained as a blue shirt cast member in the parks. And a blue shirt cast member is someone who's just kind of trained to do a little bit at a lot of things. They're not trained to work specifically at any one attraction. They're trained to learn a couple positions, namely greeter and some of the easier positions at each attraction, but they can float around whenever a attraction is short-staffed, and that way, and they wear like kind of the neutral blue shirt that makes them be able to float around and fill in wherever it's needed. And what I explained to Ricky was that back then we didn't really have blue shirts. We didn't have those floaters that went around, but what they would do is they would train cast members at attractions to be able to lend a hand at nearby attractions when needed. And that actually happened at both attractions I worked with, being Muppets and over at the Jungle Cruise. And at the Jungle Cruise, what they did was, because Pirates of the Caribbean can actually be crewed with a very slim number of cast members to make that attraction function all the way through. What they would do during slower times, either early in the morning or late in the evening, they would reduce the number of cast members that worked over there. But in case of emergency, like an evacuation situation with Pirates, they wouldn't have enough people to properly evacuate the attraction if needed, if an emergency did pop up and they were short-staffed. So what they did is they spent time training all the Jungle Cruise skippers. You would spend a few hours in the morning on one of your training days, and they would take you over to Pirates, and they would teach you how to properly evacuate the attraction. So yes, that did lead to one of my favorite days ever working at Disney World, was the 3 hours that I got to spend over at Pirates of the Caribbean at an extremely early hour in the morning, getting to have some backstage fun, walk on the sets, play with the pirates, do all kinds of things that we probably weren't allowed to do, but we did anyway because nobody else was around to do it, and I had a very, very, very lax trainer when I was over at the Jungle Cruise. So we had a lot of fun learning all the little ins and outs, the quirky deals, how to get people on and off the boats properly and safely. And you're probably sitting there going, how exactly does Star Tours work into this whole story that you're rambling on with? Hold on, I'll tell you, because I got about as close as you possibly can become to working Star Tours without ever actually getting to work it. And it does float back to this whole floater story as well. You see, what happened one day while working at Muppets, and to go back just a little bit more, working at Muppets, you weren't trained to work anywhere else. That's not true for my third time out there, which was in 2002, where they did do some training to teach you how to run the parades in Fantasmic, but that was not only for Muppets, that was for all Disney, MGM Studios, Hollywoods, whatever you want to call it these days, cast members that were coming into the park, and no matter where you worked, you were trained to work those two attractions for days to help fill in when they were short-staffed over there. But for the most part, just a normal Muppet Vision cast member, you were not trained in any other attraction. You just did your job there, and you were good to go. Well, one day, Star Tours had an excessive amount of call-ins, people sick, people not showing up to work, whatever you want to call it. I don't know the exact story on why. All I know is they were very short-staffed, and the managers were panicking a little bit, and they couldn't get any new cast members to come in on days that were already scheduled off, all this stuff, and you know, it wasn't, I don't think, at the point like they're going to have to close the attraction or anything like that, but I think it was at the point where a bunch of managers might have had to fill in over there and work the attraction, which is not always a good thing because it takes the managers off of the, you know, walking around the parks and making sure everything's running good and keeps them centralized in one location. So it's not necessarily a proper, you know, way to solve the problem, but managers are trained enough to know how to fill in on those roles when needed. So as they're scrambling around trying to figure out what to do, one of the managers comes over to Muppets and basically asked, is anybody trained at Muppets? And the reason he would ask that is because, you know, obviously cast members don't work at the same attraction their entire careers at Disney. After a set amount of months, you can go into switch attractions, and there were several instances of Muppets cast members who did used to work Star Tours. There's 2 or 3 of my good friends that I worked out there at the time with, right off the top of my head, that I remember that had worked Star Tours before and moved over to Muppets. And they, unfortunately, on those days were not working on this short-staffed day. So the manager's scrambling around wondering what to do and wants to know if anybody from Muppets would like to go over and work greeter all day at Star Tours. Greeter, what that is, obviously, stand out front and greet the guests as they come onto the attraction. That's all you do. Hello, tell them what line to go in and go through. So, hearing the chance that somebody could go over there and work Star Tours, even if it wasn't actually working the attraction, going really behind the scenes on the attraction, but it was getting to put that costume on, stand out there at the front, and, put another mark on your board on the attractions that you worked, I gladly jumped at the opportunity to get to go over there and work Star Tours. So the manager, of course, asked, "Are you trained at Star Tours?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. All I can do is greet, but I can do that just fine." So, he's like thinking about it for a few minutes. He's like, "Hold on, give me a little time to see exactly what we're going to do. I'll call you if we need you." So I go back working Muppets. Don't hear anything for I want to say it was a good half hour or so. 30, 45 minutes goes by. I get the call over there at the attraction that, yes, they need me. Go to costuming immediately, put on a Star Tours costume, and report to Star Tours. So I was giddy. I, clock out at Muppets, run down to costuming, which, for those who don't know, maybe I should do a whole behind the scenes at the parks one of these days for you guys, a cast member story. But the costuming department is behind the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. As you're entering the park, if you look over to your far left, at the main entrance, past that little one-man security gate, if you were to keep going that way to your left, you would come up on costuming. That's where the cast members go in and out to the entrance of the park. Huge, huge building. I go over there and I get my Star Tours costume. I put it on. I'm all dressed. And I get over to Star Tours only to find out that people started showing up. People who could actually run the attraction started showing up. They could run all the positions. And I was not needed. Tear. I know. Very sad. But I did get to have the orange shirt, the blue pants on, the black shoes. I got to at least dress in a Star Tours costume, even though I never worked the attraction, but that was kind of the extent of how floaters worked in the system back then. It's much different now, but I was one of those kind of cast members that, not only did I collect the pins from all the attractions that I worked, I tried to work as many attractions as I possibly could so I could collect more pins and, talk about it to you guys like this 10 years later, because of course I knew 10 years later I was going to, be part of a podcast to get to tell all the old Disney stories from when I worked out there. Of course, that's how it works, right? But like I said, I got so close to getting to work one of my all-time favorite attractions, and it's a bit heartbreaking that it didn't get to happen. But hey, there's always time in the future. When I left the company, I left on good terms. I had no marks against my name. I'll get to go back one of these days, and maybe I'll be lucky enough to, get to work at that time. Maybe 30 years from now, it'll be Star Tours 46, and it'll be after the next set of the 3 sequels to the original trilogy that'll be out, and then they'll do 3 prequels to the original the original prequels, and who knows, George Lucas will probably have 15 Star Wars movies in the bag by that time, but and we'll be on Star Tours 83, and there'll be 5,000 different possibilities that can happen during the attraction. We'll be up to 5D technology in the cabins. All that fun stuff. But for all you guys who are getting to go out there and experience the attraction when it opens, first off, let me say, very jealous. And 2, you better get on the message boards and tell us what it's all about, because, like I said, I'm not going to be out there until probably April at the earliest, and that is just too long to not to get to experience what I think is going to be one of the, not only benchmarks the Disney attractions, it'll definitely be one of the must-do deals at the Hollywood Studios, which, could definitely use another big attraction to hopefully help kill down some of those Toy Story Mania lines, but that's a whole other story. But I hope you enjoyed this little cast member story. I know it's been too long since I've done one, but we'll get back in the mix on those. Princess Lisa will be back soon. She also has some, she can really get into this floater story as well. They didn't do floating back then when she worked in Fantasyland, but that was because Fantasyland people were not trained at one attraction. They were trained at multiple attractions. So maybe that's something that she can get into as well and let you know how things ran in Fantasyland when she was out there. And we also have some fun other stories that we've been meaning to get into. Unfortunately, just schedules have been insane the last few, I'd like to say weeks, but it's actually turned into months. But now things are slowing down, settling down, and it's time to talk a lot more Disney with you guys. So that's about it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this cast member story. We'll be back next week. Princess Lisa will be back as well. But in the meantime, back to you, Ricky.
Thanks very much, Skipper Ben. Great to hear how you almost got your coveted position over at Star Tours. I as you said at the beginning, I did email you about the blue shirts around the Magic Kingdom. It's kind of one of those strange positions that cast members can take where you're not really in a specific costume for a specific attraction. You can just wander around, and you don't wander around, it's as you're assigned to various parts, but certainly interesting how that works. Not everybody has a specific place all the time, and sounds like you were occasionally bumped around like that, but not nearly as much as some of the cast members today. So thanks again. All right, that concludes Skipper Ben's segment. For everyone watching on YouTube, I will prepare our next segment here. If you just give me a moment. Got one more segment, and then we'll actually get to the listener feedback at the end of the show, at which point I'm going to try to answer perhaps some live questions from the chat room if anyone's got anything interesting to ask. Okay, here we go again.
Inside the Magic proudly presents a restaurant review.
We are guests, we are guests, we are guests.
And now it is time for a restaurant review, but it's not a review that I'm going to be giving because I have actually never dined at this restaurant. Of course, we've got the royal wedding coming up that I mentioned earlier in the show. Disney's having their first ever Walt Disney World tweet up surrounding the royal wedding, and this one seemed strangely appropriate with that coming up in, I guess, just about a week and a half. It is a restaurant review of Victoria and Albert's, the very fancy dining over at the Grand Floridian. As I said, I have never personally dined there before. However, Inside the Magic listener Scott in New Jersey recently dined there and sent in a review of the experience. So now, let's go on over to Scott.
Hi, Ricky. This is Scott in New Jersey calling in with a restaurant review of Victoria and Albert's at the Grand Floridian Hotel at Walt Disney World. a while back, my wife and I were able to celebrate our 4th and wedding anniversary at Victoria and Albert's, and it was a really special night. Obviously, Victoria and Albert's is a very exclusive restaurant and very pricey, and it's not something we can do very often, but it was something that we really had a great time doing. It was well worth it, and we'll hopefully do it again, maybe in another 4 years. It's pretty pricey. But I still have our wonderful menu from that evening, which we'll get to in a little bit, but just to describe what it's like when you do dine at Victoria and Albert's. The one thing that's nice is that they do provide, if you have a car, you get free valet parking at the Grand Floridian if you are dining at Victoria and Albert's, so we definitely took advantage of that. We were staying off-site on this trip with our in-laws at a timeshare resort over near SeaWorld, but we drove over, we gave our car to the valet, walked in, experienced the Grand Floridian lobby a little bit. We've never stayed at the Grand Floridian, but we definitely hung out there a few times. This was in April, so there weren't the holiday decorations, so it wasn't, quite as done up as it sometimes is, but we definitely walked around a little bit. What's really nice is how amazing the cast members who are working at the restaurants make you feel. When we got up, if you've been in the Grand Floridian, you'll know that Victoria and Albert's is just off of 1900 Park Fair. It's off to the side. You don't even really notice it, but when we got up there, there's a cast member table where they're greeting the guests for 1900 Park Fair, and we walked up to there, and they sort of motioned us over to Victoria and Albert's, and the maitre d' already had the door open, and he said he greeted us by name and welcomed us in. And the first thing you notice is just how intimate Victoria and Albert's is. They only have 2 seatings a night during the week, and we were the first seating, and it's such a small place that you really feel just it's so beautiful and darkly lit and just wonderful. There was a cellist and a harp playing when we were there, just very quiet, and obviously the cast members are attentive like they would be at any restaurant at Walt Disney World, but maybe even a little more so here. It is dressed, they are dressed in Victorian gear, Victorian wear from about 125 years ago. And that's the way that the restaurant interior is appointed as well, although the maitre d's were dressed in modern wear. It's only the servers that were dressed in the period wear. There's actually 3 servers that are dedicated just for your table alone. They don't share tables. They don't have, a few tables they go to. It's just you, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. I mean, at some restaurants you might have, one person that's just for you at a really, really nice restaurant. Well, at Victoria and Albert's, you get 2 waiters that are just for you. And I noticed that I think most tables had one man and one woman. I don't know if that was on purpose. It seemed too clearly obvious that it wasn't that it couldn't have been an accident. So that's how they do things there. The next thing you notice after all this wonderful attentive service is that waiting for you on your table are menus with your name on it. I'm still holding it in my hand, and it's sort of a nice blue portfolio sort of material with the Grand Floridian logo and seal and the Victoria and Albert's logo, and then there's like a window on the front that has your name, and my wife's had her name on it. And when you open it up, it's printed out on some very nice paper with the Victoria and Albert's logo and everything, and it says welcome to me and my wife, happy anniversary, and the date we dined there, which was very special. And then the real fun begins. I'm not going to go over how they presented all the food to us, but I'll just describe the food as best I can and using my helpful menu here as a reminder, although I don't really need too much reminders. The first thing to note is that the Victoria and Albert's is a single price fix event. That means you go to eat there, you pay one price. There's no... That's it. That's how much you pay. There are some extras you can add on. Again, there's also, I know people probably know that there is the experience called the chef's table at Victoria and Albert's, which is a couple times a week. That's an even more expensive experience where there's a special table literally in the kitchen of the restaurant. This was not that. This was the regular seating. At the time we went, though I don't think it's actually changed too much. We paid $125 per person, which seems like a lot, but actually my wife and I have traveled a lot and have done these sorts of tasting. This is not even a tasting menu, quote unquote. This is a full course menu. We've done this at many different restaurants, and actually $125 is actually a very reasonable price for the quality of food that you get. Again, it's very, very pricey, and it's not something you can do often. And now that we We have a little one. We'll probably not be doing this for quite some time again, but that's the price. You can also, for $60 per person, you can get a wine pairing with each course. So you're talking, 6-7 glasses of wine, which, for those who go out and do drink wine at restaurants, $60 for 6 or 7 glasses of wine is actually a very, very good price. So we didn't do that. We didn't want to have that much alcohol. I had to drive home back to the resort anyway. So what was nice about this, and I'll just quickly mention that, unlike some other full menu sort of fancy restaurants that have that wine pairing availability, you often cannot get a single glass of that wine pairing, just one. But at Victoria and Albert's, you can ask for a glass of the wine that goes with that course, and they will do that for you even if you're not getting the full wine tasting, which is a really, really, really nice feature, because obviously the chef and the sommelier, the person in charge of the wine at the restaurant, have specifically picked that wine for that course, for that dish. And so to be able to get that without having to get all 6 or 7 glasses of wine if you don't want it is a big feature, and something, like I said, we've done this sort of menu at other places around the country, and that is a very rare thing to be able to do that. So just off the top, that was very nice. So the first thing that they bring out to you is called an amuse-bouche, which is, if you watch Top Chef, any people out there, if you are interested in food at all, that just means a little one-bite creation that the chef prepares as a sort of welcome to the restaurant. The amuse-bouche, actually, the night we were there, was 3 small bites. And each bite was a play on lobster, or we used lobster. There was a lobster sausage, which was, I can't even describe how good it was. A lobster terrine, which terrine is usually many different things together, and then it's chilled and sliced. And a tiny little cup of lobster chowder, which was, I would have had a bowl of just that chowder for every meal at Victoria and Albert's, and every dish, and still paid the $125. That's how good it was. Obviously, they must have used some kind of expensive ingredients that could only fit in a shot glass, and it still was expensive, but that was fantastic. After the amuse-bouche came around, they brought, for the first time of many, the house-made bread, and they do have in-house pastry chef. They bake their own bread. I don't know if they bake it in the same bakeries for the rest of the Grand Floridian, or maybe just at least like 1900 Park Fair. I'm not sure how that works. It wouldn't surprise me if they just baked it in their own kitchen, because this bread was the best bread I've still had at any restaurant, in any bakery, and I've been to Paris and had bread. This bread was better. It was a brioche with black truffles, like seeds, and it was fantastic. I mean, clearly we're getting to the point, all the listeners out there will know that this is an amazing restaurant. Everything here was one of the best things I've ever had, and the bread, no different. So then, if you looking back at my menu, the way they do it is there's about 6 courses total, and for each course there's really 3 or 4 choices. But the way they break it down is that there's usually 2 choices, sometimes 3, and then a third choice or possibly 4th choice that costs extra, which is even that much more grand, fantastic, amazing, whatever you want to call it. So for the first course, our choices were duck with pickled and roasted beet salad, and beet air, which was like a beet foam. That was the first choice. The second choice was jumbo lump and peaky toe crab with an asparagus salad. And then the third choice was an Iranian golden caviar with garnishes, and that would have been $150 extra for a half an ounce of caviar, or $300 extra. This is, of course, above and beyond the $125 per person you're paying in the first place, or $300 extra for 1 ounce. So obviously that caviar is expensive. I do remember that we did this for most of the menu. We each got one so we could share a little bit. I know that I had the duck and my wife had the crab. Both were amazing. I'm originally, even though I live in New Jersey now, I'm originally from the West Coast, where we do eat a lot of beet salads, especially in the Northwest. There's a lot of really great local beet produce, and this beet salad was probably the best I've ever had. It was just amazing. I know I tasted my wife's crab, and that was also amazing. The second course, you're getting into obviously some heavier things here, and I will just say this: if you've had a tasting menu at a restaurant in your life, you often notice there's smaller portions just because there's going to be so many courses that they try to make the portions smaller so you can literally, get through the meal. Victoria and Albert's, every course is a full plated course, which is something you almost never see at this kind of restaurant or this sort of price fix menu setup. It was hard. It wasn't hard to eat everything because it was so good, but you need to be hungry when you get there because every plate they bring you is a full portion like you would get at any other restaurant. It's not small to help you through it. It's actually huge and big, which is another reason that while we're talking a lot of money for this restaurant, it is, I actually think, a very good value because a lot of places you'll pay the same or more for little small, classical style dishes that may be 1, 2, 3 bites, whereas these were full size portions of every course. The second course, the choices were Minnesota elk tenderloin with a braised red cabbage and mustard spätzle, which is, if you know German food, that's like a little potato dumplings, almost very small little pieces, like a noodle. A ballantine of poulet rouge, which is chicken, with chicken consomme, spring morels, mushrooms, and English peas. I know I had the elk. It was amazing. I had never had elk before, and it was like a very, very lean steak that was just fantastic. The red cabbage was amazing. This was a very German-style dish with the cabbage and the spätzle. My wife said she loved the chicken, I remember. It was fantastic. The third course, of course, by this point, we're already so full we can't even keep going, but we did go. The next course was there was another choice on there was a abalone, which is a West Coast delicacy, which was an extra $30. The next course was sumac crusted yellowfin tuna with bok choy and coconut emulsion. Neither of us had that, but I'm sure it was very good. Alaskan king salmon with petite French lentils, Florida corn, and saffron foam. I had that. It was amazing. This was the one course where we did actually go for the extra price, which was a pan-roasted foie gras, which is goose liver, a fatted goose liver that in some cities has become illegal because they think it is a mistreatment of the goose, the way they fatten them up to get this out of them, which is sad. I'm a very big animal rights person, but still, I love foie gras. My wife decided to get this. It also came with a Fuji apple bread pudding, which was amazing, and a mostarda, which is a Italian, it's like a mustard cream thing. Hard to explain a little bit. And that was only an extra $15, so not too much of breaking of the bank. But that foie gras to this day, and I didn't even have this, it was my wife's course, was one of the best single dishes I've ever tasted at a restaurant anywhere ever. It was so good. It was like the amount of foie gras they gave you. And if you go to, I'm sure at Bistro de Paris or Chefs de France, whichever, probably both of them over in Epcot in the France Pavilion, has a very traditional French foie gras dish where you get some sliced foie gras, usually with some toast or bread, and some quince, which is like a jelly. That compared to what we had at Victoria and Albert's is like a different dish. What we got at Victoria and Albert's were huge, big pieces of foie gras roasted like they were meat. It was unbelievable. Still, I talk about it to this day. And this was 2 years ago. So, yes, and I've waited that long to give this review in. Ricky, I know you don't have any kids, but that's what happened when you have kids. Hey, I got to do a restaurant review for Inside the Magic, turns into 2 years later. So anyway, the next course was a lamb en croûte, which means usually in like a bread, like this was a beef Wellington, like with dough around the outside, like a phyllo dough kind of thing, with a Swiss chard, which is like spinach, if people don't know, and a tomato lamb jus, like sauce. I didn't have that. My wife, I don't think my wife had that either, because I'm looking down now, I remember what she had. The other choice was a kurobata, which is a Japanese style pork tenderloin and pork belly, which is what bacon is made before it's smoked, with a banana squash ragu. Amazing. I had that. It was amazing. And my wife had the veal tenderloin with veal cheeks and sweetbreads, which is a certain kind of like the thyroid glands, which I know sounds gross, but if you follow food, that's a very common delicacy. That was amazing. Again, everything we had was amazing. You could also have gotten a Kobe beef tenderloin from Australia for $35 extra, or a Japanese Wagyu, which is a certain kind of Kobe beef, even fancier, with an oxtail jus for $80 extra. We didn't get that. But actually, the people next to us got the Wagyu. I remembered them talking about it, and they said it was fantastic. The next course was a cheese course. That was all the big food was over at that point, and we were about ready to be rolled out. We'd probably been there for an hour and a half. We were ready to be just put on a cart and rolled outside at that point. But the next course was a cheese course. My wife had it was like a trio of cheeses, a Stilton here, a Pierre Robert, and then the other option was actually a gelato, like ice cream, which I had, which was fantastic. It was all amazing. They shaved chocolate at your table. And then the dessert was still one of the best things I've ever had. There was my wife had this. It was like they called it a Tanzanian chocolate pyramid, which literally was this little pyramid with gold flakes. My wife had that. It was amazing. The puff pastry came with it. It was amazing. I had a caramelized banana, which was actually, I would never really get banana, but the server actually recommended it, and I got it. It was amazing. I still don't even know how they made this. I don't even know how they made it. It was like a baked banana that was also had some dough in it. I don't even know, but it was amazing. I still have a picture of it on my computer screen right now. I'm looking at it. And then that was the end of the meal, but then one of the nicest things was how they serve the coffee there. Is this sort of contraption, and I'm sure there's a name for it that I've forgotten, where the coffee pot the coffee is brewed by this sort of induction upside down coffee pot thing, which is probably more for show than for taste, although it did taste fantastic. And they give you the card where you can purchase, where you can actually go ahead and purchase that coffee machine if you like it. But I see I'm going a little long here. Don't want to go too long. But basically, if you ever have the chance to go to Victoria and Albert's, do it. It costs a lot of money. That is true. I know, especially these days, people don't have a lot. We didn't have a lot. We would never have been able to afford doing that if we were on a regular trip to Disney World by ourselves. But since this time we were sort of mooching off my in-laws and staying at their timeshare resort with them, we had the availability to do this. I highly recommend it. If you save up, if you obviously not for kids. I don't think they actually let kids under 16 go there. I might be wrong about that. Maybe that's changed, but we have a little one now, like I said, so we'll probably not be there for many, many years, but I highly, highly recommend it. It's something everyone should do at least once. It is a lot of people, if you've talked to everyone out there probably has the experience of talking to people who don't go to Disney very often, who don't realize how good the restaurants are. But even for those of us who do understand how great the restaurants are, this restaurant is special no matter where it was. If this restaurant was in the middle of Midtown Manhattan, it would be one of the best restaurants in the world. Just because it's sitting, 40, 50 yards or however many yards away from the main entrance of the Magic Kingdom, it's still one of the best restaurants in the world. It was one of the best food experiences my wife and I have ever had. And like I said, we've traveled a lot, been to a lot of restaurants. This was amazing. I highly recommend it. So thanks very much, Ricky. Thanks for all you do. And we'll keep on listening. Thanks a lot.
And thanks very much for that very extensive review of Victoria and Albert's. As I said, I have never been there. It is very expensive, but now after hearing about it for the last 18 minutes or so, it sounds just absolutely incredible. I can tell why it is so expensive and a rare treat to dine there. That was obviously a very long restaurant review, and normally I would have edited down something like that, but I started to go through it, and I realized that none of that meal could be edited out because it is such a carefully crafted meal and dining experience, really unlike anything else that you can find, not only at Walt Disney World, but in many, many places. So, it's really a special occasion that we'll have to try out sometime eventually. So, thanks very much once again, Scott, for that review.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Ricky, this is amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Inside the Magic listener feedback.
right, let's jump into some listener feedback. First, I'm going to go through some emails that I've received in the past week and a half or so, and then I want to try to work in a question or two from the live audience on YouTube that is watching right now. Certainly an active chat room there, so if anyone is paying attention over there, which I know that you are, start thinking of some questions, and I will ask for those in just a couple of minutes. But first, I want to get to the emails that I've received. First up is from Rachel in response to, I think, what we were talking about last week as far as planning a Disney trip and how much planning goes on in a trip to the Magic Kingdom or any of the parks. Rachel writes, I agree with having attainable expectations, but you'd be amazed at what you can get done if you do just a little premeditation. I like to sit down with my family and ask what they would like to do and see. My family dislikes planning. I love it. And if I make a mental order of rides and things to do, more tends to get done. I don't necessarily tell them first we'll do Splash Mountain, then Pirates, etc., but I keep it in the back of my head and check off my mental checklist while we go. I also made a vague trip plan for my recent vacation. I gave my trip planning ideas at disneyprincessintraining.wordpress.com, and you can also see my trip plan there. While my family complained about the plan while I was asking them questions and making it, they all agreed that it was effective and glad we were able to fit in so much. Well, Rachel, I have to agree to a certain extent. I looked at your trip plan that you posted online, and I thought it was maybe a little bit more than I like to plan for a trip. I like to have things a little bit spontaneous, but you also, the way you planned it was nice. You didn't, as you say, say we have to do this attraction, then that attraction, then that attraction. Instead, you were just, put a big block of like 4 hours and said we're at the Magic Kingdom, and then, we have a dinner here, or we have a lunch there, and then here's another block that we can do whatever we want. And as you said, you can kind of check off a list of things in your head as you go, and I'll admit I do definitely do that. Like if I go to Disneyland, there are certain attractions that I absolutely want to do, and I kind of keep a running list in my head as to, okay, have I done this, have I not done that, when's the best time to go do that, etc. But beyond that, I don't really do any further planning when it comes to a trip. It's just kind of like go, have some fun, and but if it works out for you, I think the way you approached it is good. Ask a few questions, try to push the limits of planning without getting annoying about it, and then really just get it all together. On a related note, this is kind of the other extreme of that message that we talked about before, kind of the crazy side of planning and, creating videos or any kind of unique preparation for a Disney trip. Mel from Sydney, Australia wrote in and said, in your response to listener Mark on show 314 about doing crazy things while planning a trip, I have something that is similar but a little bit different. My husband and I have been planning a trip to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, and a Disney cruise for us and our 3 children. What is crazy about it is that we have been planning and saying it since before we conceived our first son. We started saving in 2006 and always intended to take our 3 kids when the eldest was 7 or 8. The craziness is that we didn't even have a child in 2006. Our eldest is now turning 4 this week, and we are halfway through our countdown. By the way, we did indeed have a second and third child, all as planned. There are a couple of reasons for the long wait. 21 hours is not a fun amount of time to spend in an airplane with 3 small children, so we wanted them to be a little older. And secondly, the cost for the trip requires us to save. Flying from Australia is expensive, and then there are all the other costs, not the least of which will be feeding 3 growing boys for the month or so we'll be over there. Bring on 2015. It will be a fantastic trip. Now, Mel, that is definitely the ultimate in planning. To plan a trip for your children that don't even exist in this world yet is pretty amusing. These kids were, I guess, predetermined to be going on a Disney trip, and I'm sure they're not going to argue about it either. It sounds like you're going to have a great time. Next up is an email from Alexa, who writes, I just finished listening to your show and heard the tip about bringing the Seen It flashcards to play while waiting in line. This is a great tip. However, I have another. I am one that does not like to carry anything around, just a room key and my iPhone, and the iPhone has several Seen It apps. And at my recent trip over to Disney World over Christmas, my kids and I played Seen It while we were in line. We had the iPhone app with us, and the iPhone does not have Seen It Disney, but it does have other titles that are just as fun. Alexa, that's definitely a great addition to the idea of bringing the Seen It cards from the home game. You can just pull it up on your phone, and hopefully a Disney edition will come to the iPhone as well. But in the meantime, certainly using a phone to occupy your time in the queues that Disney has not yet enhanced, then that's a good way to do it. Thanks for the tip. Here's a special request from a longtime Inside the Magic listener, Danielle, and she wanted me to mention a website called toursdepartingdaily.com. They have posted some really amazing HDR photography of Disneyland and California Adventure, downtown Disney, just really stunning photos. So I definitely recommend everybody checks it out. Again, that's toursdepartingdaily.com. Next up is an email from Nicholas, who writes, just got done with my second day here in Orlando and spent some time with the family at Universal. The first trip was straight to Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. We arrived at nearly 5 p.m., and the wait was about 45 minutes, but the line moved almost constantly, and I was happy to fit in the seats, and I got a great ride photo as well. It truly has to be ridden to be believed. I wonder, was the dragon meant to move a lot? Because I didn't seem wowed by its other than its mere presence. Overall, I was disappointed with how poorly maintained many animatronic figures were at rides like Jurassic Park, E.T., and Men in Black. Costs must be high for maintenance, but it ruins the experience and immersion of the theme. I am staying at the Swan, and I noticed every time I walk into the main lobby area, there is a highly noticeable and distinct perfumey smell in the air, which doesn't seem to permeate the entire hotel room, hallways, and elevators. In fact, I could have sworn that the elevators smelled a mix of food. I know scent machines are common and used on rides in the past, like on Horizons, but was clueless about the resort use until now. Do all resorts have unique lobby scent? Do they sell bottled versions? Well, Nicholas, thanks very much for the email. I will try to answer your questions. First up, Forbidden Journey. Yes, the dragon does move a bit more than it sounds like he did for you. I know that dragon has been on and off working, has a few effects associated with it, so perhaps on your next time through you'll get a full working dragon experience. As far as the animatronics around Universal, you're right. There are definitely some animatronics that have been in and out recently. Fortunately, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter has brought a huge amount of money into Universal, so they are actively working on fixing up everything that has been not working for years and years and years over there. So while things may not be working still at the moment, they seem to be reinvesting all that money, or a good chunk of that money, back into the parks and really sprucing everything up back to the way that it should be. And as far as your scent question in the hotels, you're absolutely right. There are many hotels now that do, in fact, pump scents using scent machines into their hotel lobbies, be it a citrusy scent or something tropical or, whatever you thought was a lobby sort of smell. It is definitely not your imagination. There are indeed specific scents that are pumped into hotel lobbies, and sometimes if you look around, maybe in the corners, if you look up toward the ceiling in a corner somewhere, you might see the little machine that has a little fan on it and pumping the scents in there. And as far as selling bottled version of lobby scents, no, I don't think so. I remember I went to the Haunt, a Halloween convention a couple of years ago, and they were selling all kinds of Halloween-related scents. A lot of spooky ones, kind of nothing that you would want in your house necessarily, but I'm sure if you go online, the fact that they sell those, you could find plenty of enjoyable scents and probably a scent machine as well. Next email comes in from Hayden in New Zealand, who writes, been listening for 2 years now. Sorry I haven't asked earlier, but we've had a couple major earthquakes in the last 6 months. Very scary. Anyhow, coming to the United States, California in July to escape the aftershocks, and I won an all-expenses-paid trip to the World Championships of Performing Arts in L.A., which is very exciting. I was just wondering if you knew what fireworks show was going on in the summer of this year. I was also wondering if you could recommend the World of Color dinner and viewing at Ariel's Grotto. I definitely want premium viewing. It's not every day you're at Disneyland, and also there's a Phantasmic dinner package. Well, Hayden, congratulations on your winning of that trip. I'm sorry to hear about the earthquakes and the aftershocks, but it sounds like you'll be able to escape that for a bit and have some fun at Disneyland. To answer your questions, the World of Color dinner option is definitely a good one. I do recommend it. And now, Ariel's Grotto, on the other hand, I would not recommend seeing World of Color from over there. It's a bit off to the side. You really want a prime front and center view to enjoy World of Color the most. I know so some of the dinner packages, it may be a little bit confusing as to you get to eat over or watch from over here or over there. If you can get one of those dinner packages and see a front viewing of World of Color versus over to the side Ariel's Grotto, then that would definitely be the way to go. As far as a Fantasmic dinner package, not necessarily necessary. Phantasmic, as long as you don't mind standing amongst many, many other people in New Orleans Square, it's pretty easy to get a spot. Show up a bit early and just, stake your spot out and stand there and wait for the show. It's not, really necessary to get the dinner package there. So hopefully that will... Oh, and you also asked about the fireworks. I'm not sure what fireworks show is going to be at Disneyland this year, whether they're just going to continue to do the Remember Dreams Come True fireworks show, or if they're going to have a new one, any kind of a Summer Night-tastic, or if they're going to bring back Magical. I haven't heard anything to that effect quite yet. Have fun on your trip. Next is an email, a couple of emails actually that are related. We've been talking about walking around the parks to get exercise, and Jason wrote in and said on a recent episode, he talked about a listener who has a walking route around Disneyland. I pulled up Google Earth and used its path marking feature to see how long a walk would be if you walked up Main Street and around the park into Adventureland and into Tomorrowland. Total distance was 1.44 miles. It did the same for Epcot and came up with 2.37 miles. Hope this can be of some help to some listeners. Jason, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that you could go onto Google Earth and just actually mark out a path and see the distance around it, which is a pretty cool feature. I probably should have known that it would be able to do that. So a great way to plan if you have a specific number of miles that you want to walk. On a related note, not necessarily with walking, but instead just being healthy in general in the parks, Carrie wrote in and said maybe you could answer on the show, set up a last-minute trip to Disney in May, and have been on a diet recently. I've lost 75 pounds and want to continue on at the parks. Which restaurants have good choices, turkey burgers, etc.? I don't eat salads, so that option is out for me. Well, Carrie, as much as I've been trying to cut down on portion sizes personally to lose some weight, I have not really discovered the mystery of eating healthy specifically around the parks as far as specific restaurants. I'm not one for turkey burgers. I don't mind salads, but turkey burgers, not for me. So I'm going to have to relay this one to listeners, perhaps in the live chat room right now, or just if anybody wants to email to Ricky@InsideTheMagic.net. If you have any specific locations around Walt Disney World that are healthier choices that still have some good food, I'll be happy to mention them here. Next is an email from Julia, who writes, love the show. It provides me with that much-needed Disney fix when I can't travel to the parks. My two friends and I are coming to Disney in September, and even though we have been to the Disney parks countless times, we've never been to Universal. During this trip, we scheduled 2 days for Universal, and we're wondering if there are any cheap/free ways to get from Disney property over to Universal. Since we're staying at All-Star Music, we decided not to rent a car, but we've heard that the taxis to Universal can cost about $40 for one way, and $160 is a lot for transportation. So, Julia, you're right. That is definitely quite a lot for transportations. For transportation, that is. I would recommend looking into the Mears shuttle service. It's probably a little bit less expensive than going with the straight taxi. You can probably get away with maybe around $20 instead of your $40 to get over to Universal and back. You're not going to find any free options. Of course, the least expensive option is Orlando's public transit service, transportation, the bus service, Lynx. It's not the nicest, transportation in the world. It is public transportation, but it'll get you there. It might take a while to go through all the stops and get you over there. Eventually, you might have to transfer, and so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. And for the price that you just quoted, a rental car would probably actually be cheaper. So my advice would either be a Mears or a rental car. Moving back to Carrie's question, I'm just looking at the live chat right now. Kip Wade in the live chat recommends going to All Ears Net for menus as far as planning ahead for dieting at Walt Disney World. Apparently, they've got a pretty extensive view of all of that. So, good recommendation. Thanks for that. Next is an email from Robert, who writes, "You have to check this out. Your podcast really made my day this morning. I was headed to rehearse my own middle school jazz band while listening to your music portion of the show, and wow, Jazz Disney. That is so cool. When I went to Nikki Yanofsky's site, I found out she's one of many artists on Disney Jazz Volume 1, Everybody Wants to Be a Cat. Can't wait to buy this CD." Robert, thanks very much for mentioning that. I should have mentioned that last week when I played that great rendition of It's a Small World by Nikki Yanofsky. I should have mentioned that it is indeed on that album. It was recorded for that album, Disney Jazz Volume 1, and I'll go ahead and make that this week's featured item. So head on over to InsideTheMagic.net in this week's show notes to check that out. Actually, I guess that's the end of the emails. I want to see if I can get a couple of live questions here. There was one that was submitted just a little while ago that I pulled out of the live stream, and I will answer this one while anybody else in the live chat room out there on YouTube has a chance to ask some additional questions. We'll go through just maybe 2 or 3 of them, and then we'll wrap up the show. First one is from Train and Light Guy, who says, "I have a question for the show. What's happening after the Main Street Electrical Parade goes back to Disneyland? Is Spectrum Magic coming back, or is Disney still working on that new parade that they were talking about earlier that would debut in 2012? I haven't heard anything lately about a new nighttime parade." Well, I also have not heard anything at all. In fact, there isn't really even an announced end date for the electrical parade out here. I know a while ago there was a rumor of a new parade coming when new Fantasyland premiering, but other than rumors, it's not clear as to exactly what will be happening in the world of parades out here in Florida. So we're just gonna have to wait and see at this point and see if the electrical parade heads back to Disneyland or if anything else is going on. Here's a question from the live chat from Disney Park Audio, who writes, "With Star Tours, the adventures continue, and the Little Mermaid Ariel's Undersea Adventure opening on the same day in California, which do you think will be the bigger draw?" That's a really tough question. Of course, Star Wars has a huge audience, but knowing that there seems to be that there's going to be soft openings for Star Tours in California prior to that June 3rd opening date, as well as Star Tours opening out here in Florida on May 20th, perhaps earlier for soft openings, that will kind of have come and gone a bit with the big grand opening out here, whereas the Little Mermaid, that will be the absolute first time that anyone can ride it, unless there's soft openings for that as well, of course. It's going to be a tough split, though. I think Star Wars fans and Little Mermaid fans are not necessarily the same group of people, so it's going to be, some people go over to California Adventure, some go over to Disneyland, and I think the lines will be very, very long for both attractions. Personally, I think Star Wars has a bigger following than the Little Mermaid ride will. Of course, California Adventure has a lot of things ongoing. It is very much a construction land at this point, and while that's going on, crowds may be more likely to go to Disneyland Park until all of that is completed. So I'm leaning towards Star Tours when that reopens, having longer lines, but I guess we'll just have to watch it and see. Certainly out here in Florida, obviously Star Tours will have the longer line because we're not getting Little Mermaid until next year. Tom in Chicago in the live chat is asking if there's any truth to the rumor of Vacation Club coming to the Grand Floridian. It seems very, very likely. There have been, it seems like some filings with the local county that construction will be going on over at Grand Floridian. Of course, Disney never comments on their Vacation Club additions until they are absolutely ready. Even with Bay Lake Tower being built over by the Contemporary, they didn't officially announce that until the building was well under construction, in fact, almost done. So even if they are building something for Vacation Club at the Grand Floridian, it's going to be a very long time before Disney officially confirms that that is what they are doing, but all signs point to yes at the moment. Dana Disney asks, any rumors on an annual pass holder preview for Star Tours at Hollywood Studios? Yes, there should be some sort of preview. In the last Mickey Monitor, it was hinted at that there would be some kind of a preview. It's Disneyland, of course, has already been running a sign-up of sorts with a random drawing to see who gets to go see the attraction early. Nothing like that has happened out here at Walt Disney World yet, but it does seem to indicate that there will be some sort of preview for Star Tours. Just have to stay tuned and wait for Disney to announce it. Just reading through the live chat maybe for one more question. See if anyone else has anything else to say before we wrap up the show this week. All right, here's the last one. Mascot Mad1 asks, do you think Star Tours' official name is Star Tours 3D, or is this just to tell guests that it is now in 3D? That's definitely a great question. As I said at the top of the show, on the official Star Tours Facebook page, they've been billing it as Star Tours 3D. I don't think that's going to be the actual name of the attraction, though. It seems like Star Tours The Adventures Continue, as wordy as it is, seems to be the official name for the attraction. However, Star Tours 3D is likely what they're going to be advertising. You know, it's a lot like Toy Story Midway Mania, which is the official name of the attraction, but for advertising purposes and for signs and everything, they seem to call it Toy Story Mania, just because it's catchier. So Star Tours 3D, it's, you know, running with that whole 3D thing that's going on. Every movie comes out in 3D now, so now you've even got attractions, and, you know, an attraction that you've been seeing for years that's in 2D is now in 3D, and all of that. I'm sure marketing will put their 3D spin on that as much as possible, and that's really what all of this, these images that you're seeing in this mall tour are all promotional for, you know, coming out of marketing, basically. So that's why you're seeing, I think, Star Tours 3D for now, but the actual sign that will be posted on the attraction, and actually already has been posted on the attraction out at Disneyland, says Star Tours The Adventures Continue. So I think we will wrap it up there. Of course, if anyone has any additional questions, you can email, as always, to Ricky at InsideTheMagic.net.
Tomorrow.
And that about wraps up show 315 of Inside the Magic. First up, I want to thank everybody who has been tuning in live on YouTube for this first ever time. Other than maybe the audio being a little bit out of sync, it seems like it's been a great time having a live video stream of the recording. I'll see if I can figure out the technical difficulties in the future. Hopefully YouTube is recording this first broadcast. It tells me it is. It tells me somehow this recording will be available on our YouTube channel after it's done over at youtube.com/InsideTheMagic. If for some reason it doesn't record it properly, doesn't save it, I'm also recording it locally, and I'll try to re-upload it afterwards. But there it is. So we've had more than 100 people watching live this time, and if anyone, I'll try to do this again in the future, usually midday Sundays or so is when I record the show, so if anyone wants to tune in the future, just visit the YouTube channel, and that's when you will see it. I do want to thank Magical Travel for sponsoring this week's episode of Inside the Magic. You can find out more about their services by visiting magicaltravel.com, and also please visit us over at lanyardlab.com to see all of the different styles and custom lanyard options that we have available. You can request a price quote today and receive a free digital preview, of your lanyard design. Again, that's at lanyardlab.com. And of course, between episodes of the show, visit InsideTheMagic.net as your source for Disney and theme park news. You can find not only each week's show notes, but also all of our podcasts and videos and news and articles and photos and everything. And follow us on Twitter over at twitter.com/InsideTheMagic, and on Facebook at facebook.com/InsideTheMagic as well. So thanks to everybody for listening and for watching on YouTube Live, and have a magical week. Goodbye.
Reality, it's a dream come true for you and me, so there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, just a dream.